So Luke, this is all based on Richard Dawkins' selfish gene theory, I suppose. And the basic idea of that theory is that we're basically gene replicating machines, or survival machines, as Dawkins puts it. But basically, the genes are what wants to propagate. So we are carriers of genes, and the genes are the real core of what it is that wants to survive. And so we're programmed, so the story goes, to protect this body that contains the genes, because the genes want to go on to the next generation. So from that perspective, of course, we're always going to be selfish because we can only look out for our own genes. But the problem with this is, Dawkins came out with this theory maybe 30 years ago when we were, talking about mapping the genome, and wow, we're going to figure out every single gene and what it correlates to in a person's physical appearance, and not only that, but their actual behavior, their intelligence, and so on and so forth. But it turns out genes aren't actually responsible for as much as we thought they were. They're responsible for about 48% of the phenotype, which is the way the genes are expressed. Intelligence, just to give an example, is more than 50% a product of the child's early environment, the way it's nurtured and cared for by its parents and by the community that takes care of it. And so most of our selfish instincts aren't really instincts at all. Certainly the body is programmed to react in certain ways, like when you touch a hot burner, it's going to jolt back because it wants to protect itself. And when another person comes at you with a knife, you're going to do whatever you can to protect yourself. But I think that we're taking a step beyond what we actually know to say that human beings are inherently selfish. I think we're certainly raised, if we're in a capitalistic society, we're certainly raised to perceive ourselves and others that way, because we're constantly told that we're in competition with everybody else. But in general, I'm not so sure that if we educated children in a different way and raised them in a different way, that we wouldn't be saying it's human nature to be selfless. Because certainly, I think when you reach a certain level of conscious awareness, you realize you really don't have a self, and you never had a self. And so what are you trying to protect? And how could that be the inherent, innate nature of human beings if there was never a self to begin with? We sort of pick up that sense of self from the way we're nurtured and taught and acculturated by our community. We're taught to be selfish. We're taught to think we are an ego. But in reality, if we were never taught that, we would never develop one. If our system of education wasn't designed to foster competition and survival of the fittest and all those metaphors that we've projected onto nature, then the human being would be totally different. So, let's think more about this, because I don't think you've arrived at the final conclusion. There's certainly much more to be said about this.